Hi, welcome back to Crafting a Country Life. I've got some rosettes here to share with you that I've been working on this past week. I would sit down in the evening and stitch some of these together a little bit at a time. Didn't take too long to put them together, but I've used some different materials and I wanted to share with you my process and hopefully, you'll find a little bit of inspiration there. I had a really nice time working on these and also selecting the different materials that I wanted to use from my stash. So that was really fun. Well, the first one that I made is this little pink rosette, and this one is made with craft felt, just the regular old craft felt that you can find in any craft store. And what I did with this is I gathered up along one long edge of the strip, and the size of the felt that I cut was 1 inch wide by 10.5 inches long, which I think was about the size of the felt square that I had purchased. So what I did then was to just take my needle and run a stitch along one of the long edges to create a gathering. It's just a running stitch. And then I pulled it up and tied it off in a nice tight knot. So one thing I would recommend when you're doing this is that you use a good quality polyester thread. I did try a cotton wrapped polyester thread that I had in my stash. This one's actually kind of old. But when I went to tie the knot in it, it broke. So back to the drawing board, and then I pulled out my good quality Gutermann sewing thread. This is 100% strong polyester. So that worked out better. And then I doubled the thread on my needle. I don't know if you can really see that too well, but it's doubled, and then I just knotted the end of it. It's about 24-inch long piece of thread, doubled in the needle and knotted on the end. Let me show you my technique, and then maybe what I'm telling you will make a little bit more sense as we're looking at the different examples. So I started off, and you can use really whatever materials you like. You just want to make sure that you adjust the size of your running stitch to kind of match the thickness of your material. So if you're using something fairly thick, like a felt, such as this, you want to keep your stitches about 1/2 inch long, give or take a little bit. And that's going to do is it's going to allow the felt or the fabric that you use to form a nice kind of curve. See, if you look on the top, there's like these little pleats, these little trumpet-shaped pleats. So about 1/2 inch on the felt, because the felt is thick, will allow for a nice rounding of those little pleats as you go around. So the thicker the fabric, you want to use a stitch that's just a little bit thicker. Okay, for a crepe paper rosette, such as this one here, okay, and this one, well, let me back up a little bit. This one is made from regular crepe paper that I picked up at the Dollar Tree a couple of years ago. And this rosette is 6 layers deep. And the size of the strips is 1 3/8 inches wide by 12 inches long. And then all I did was I stacked my crepe paper strips up. Like you see me doing here. I've got 4 strips, and I'm going to leave just 4 on this one so that you can see the difference between a 4 strip and a 6 strip. This one is fairly thick. So if you look along the side edge, it's pretty hefty. All right, and then you can fluff these out if you want them more 3-dimensional and flower-like. You can separate these layers after you stitch everything together. So you can leave it this way or go ahead and fluff them out. It's up to you. Anyway, so I've got 4 strips on this one. This one won't be quite as thick as that one, but that's okay. So I'm lining up the edges on my crepe paper strips. These again are 12 inches long, and I've got 4 of them stacked together, and these are just about 1 3/8 inches wide, okay? So I've got my needle threaded right here. Underneath the screen so you can see. And you want to start on the facing side of your rosette. In other words, you want to stab through the paper close to the edge on the top side. And then when you end up on the other end, you want your needle to come up and you're going to end on the top side. So you're entering on the top side at the beginning and ending on the top side when you come out. And the only reason for that is so that when you tighten up the thread on this, both of your raw edges are going to end up on the bottom. Okay? So the front side will have a nice, neat looking, pleat or fold there. And both of the raw edges will be on the back side where you don't have to see them. Okay, so that's the only reason for doing that. If that doesn't bother you, then you can enter and end on either side of your rosette to suit your desire. Okay, so I'm starting on the top side and I'm going to insert my needle, kind of close to the edge, within 1/8 of an inch, and maybe 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the crepe paper right here. So I'm going to just enter, go to the back, and then I'm going to, just eyeball it. Just about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit less is okay. And I'm going to pull that double thread through till the knot, comes up. Okay. Whoops. Getting frame there. Okay, I've got a little bit of a lump there in my thread. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to continue across. I'm just holding on to my crepe paper layers and entering and exiting on the top side, pulling my thread through, coming across. And once you get to the other end, you can straighten out any little, like if there's any little loopies in your stitch, you can straighten them out at that point. Okay, so I'm going to go right to the other end, back and forth, give or take about 1/2 inch. It's not that critical. Of course, the more exacting you are, the neater your pleats are going to be, but sometimes it's nice just to have it kind of a random assortment of sizes too, depending on what effect you really want. Okay. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I'm slipping out of frame there a little bit. Okay. Down to this end. And you can see, once you've made a few of these, they really do zip along pretty quick. You can make a whole pile of them in a pretty short amount of time. We're getting close to the end. A little bit further. And it really is fun choosing different materials. We've got some here that are made from netting, some are crepe paper, some are fabric. You could even do some out of like odd lace bits or lace by the yard, trims by the yard. Take a look through your stash. If you are a sewer like I am, you probably have lots of really pretty ribbons and laces hanging around your sewing space that you could probably use to make rosettes with. All right, so I'm coming to the end here, and I'm just going to come up about a good 1/4 of an inch from the end. I've got one piece here that's a little longer, so I'm going to go ahead and trim off just to even that up right here. We'll just cut off the excess just to even it up there. Okay. Now I'm just going to pull up this gathered edge. I've got my knot back here. Okay, and then I'm going to pull this up to pull those pleats in place. Just like so. Okay, now everybody has a little different technique. I like to cut my needle off before I start tying. So I'm going to do that first. Leave a good amount of thread so that you can have something to grab onto when you go to tie this. Okay, and I'm just going to wrap these ends of thread around each other and pull them tight. I'm going to work slowly and carefully though so that the pleats shape properly as I'm pulling. You want to pull it nice and tight. Don't over pull. You know, you'll be able to feel what when the pleats come together. You'll know. You'll be able to feel it. Okay, so there's my rosette, and you want to make sure that those papers are, you know, meeting in the center. I'm going to put this down on the table so that I can tie a knot in there, and this can be a little bit fiddly, you know, until you get some practice going on that. Okay. And you know, you don't really have to worry if the center hole doesn't really close up all the way. It's really not a problem because more than likely you're going to be covering that center up anyway with die cut shapes or another layer or a doily or something. Okay, so now I'm going to just trim off those tails. And here's my rosette. And this is the front side of my rosette. And if you look on the back, you'll see how both of those raw edges are now on the bottom side of my rosette, and they don't show on the front, which is great. Then you want to just take your fingers and you can arrange these pleats a little bit to make them a little more defined. I like to just give them a gentle pinch, like this one was folded in here. So I'm just popping my finger underneath and grabbing that pleat, you know, just to form it a little more carefully. And just go around and, you know, arrange everything where you want it to be. Okay, so there's the finished rosette. And then this one, as you can see, this one has 4 layers, all right? And the other one that I showed you had 6. So this one's a little heftier, a little beefier. I'm gonna fluff this one up a little bit. So to do that, all you wanna do is just take the top layer and gently just separate it from the other 3. And I don't know if you're like me, but when we were kids, we used to make those tissue paper flowers where you'd layer up the tissue paper. You'd fold the papers up like an accordion, and then you'd, you know, put a pipe cleaner through the middle to make a paper flower, and then you would, you know, fluff up the little petals. This is exactly the same thing as doing that. Okay, so I've got this layer here. And just go around and pull them up as much as you want. They don't have to even be this full. They can be much flatter, but I'm just exaggerating this a little bit so that you can see the technique. Okay, so there's that one. Do this here. And then this last layer right here. This actually, doesn't that look a little bit like a daffodil? I mean, you probably could use these for flowers even, you know, come to think of it. All right, let's, whoops, tear there. I can trim that little tear off later with my scissors, but for now, we'll just separate the last layer from the base layer, like that. Okay, so all the layers are separated now, and it does really look like a flower, doesn't it? I'm going to push this back down a bit. I don't want it quite that flower-ish. I prefer more of a rosette look. So I think that looks better, just kind of like that. And it's got some depth to it. And then, of course, my plan will be, you know, I cut out these little 1-inch circles, and I'm going to be gluing these in the center. And then I'm going to build my rosette on top of that little base. And then I do the same thing on the back, just to cover up the center. You know, sometimes it'll just be a plain white circle, or it could be colored, whatever you like. So you're going to glue one on the back, and then glue something on the front here to create like a little flat area that you can then build up other items onto your rosette. I have some doilies here, and you can put those in the center as well. And then maybe some pretty buttons, some ephemera, puffy stickers, whatever you like. You can add cheesecloth, little bits of fabric on there, whatever strikes your fancy. So that is one technique that you can use. You can also take this a step further if you like, and you can glitter these with different types of glitter. I have just a couple of examples here of different ones that I've tried in the past. This is the Sulin Party Blend glitter that I get at Walmart. It's fairly inexpensive. It's really pretty, and it has like kind of a shiny, glistening look. This white one has kind of a holographic glisten to it, and it's got smaller and larger bits of glitter in there. This one is the same brand in a kind of a bluish color. I also have one in pale pink and another one in yellow, so that's nice to use. And then I have this old bottle of just regular old glitter glue. This is also really nice around the edges of your rosettes as well. And you can leave it as is for a tiny bit of sparkle, or you can then dip it, dip the wet edges of your rosette again into a different type of glitter and get a different effect. And then regular old Elmer's Glue All. I like to use this because it's not too thick. So this is like a good basic one to start with. Or really any kind of thinner craft glue is probably fine. Napkins make beautiful layered rosettes as well. So you can cut these apart and do the same thing, stitch them together to make rosettes. They're absolutely beautiful and very soft. This has kind of a vintage feel, I thought. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so that's another idea. So what I'm going to do here is just show you the rest of these designs, and then we'll glitter up one of the rosettes just to see how that comes out. All right, this little rosette here was made using just plain old organza ribbon, and it's about, I think, an inch wide. Let's take a little check. Yep, just a hair over an inch wide. And this particular ribbon, just looking here to see how long. All right, there's no wire edge on this, obviously. I've not ever tried making them with a wire edge. I like that this is very soft, so I use just, ribbon that doesn't have any wiring in it. And this is about 12 inches long by 1 inch wide. Just cut your strip off, stitch it together the way that I showed you in the technique a little while ago. And again, when you're doing a smaller rosette with thinner materials like this is very sheer. You want to, take your stitch length down to about 1/4 of an inch. You're going to get, a finer pleat, which is what you want with something like this. Okay. This one, I just love this one. I cut a strip of fabric, and this fabric, let's see, what did I write down here? Okay, this one is 15 inches long by 1 1/4 inches wide. And I find that length works well with this weight and this width. Okay, so you can play around with your lengths and widths, but these are just kind of a good place to start. If I make them longer, they're going to be a little bit fuller, and the edges will be more pleated than what you see here. But I wanted these to be somewhat open closer to the edge so that you could see the floral pattern in between. So again, just play around with your sizes if you're not happy with these guidelines. So anyway, this the fabric was cut, and then I pinked one long edge with my pinking shears before I gathered up the center with my needle and thread. And I just think that is so charming out of the fabric. This would be so cute in like a fine, like a dotted, a plain dotted fabric. Would be really cute. Or even gingham would be pretty. So that's quilting cotton. This one here is 2 layers. The width on this strip about 1.5 inches. So it's slightly wider, and it makes a big difference in the size of the rosette when you go up just a tiny bit in your width. Okay, so this one here is made out of organza, 1.5 inches wide by 12 inches long, and I used 1/2 inch stitches along the long edge of this. And this, again, as I say, was double layered. So that is so sparkly and pretty. I just love that, and it really holds its shape. It's quite stiff. Here's the strip that I cut for it, and this is just from the regular organza ribbons that you can buy on a spool. I think they come around 4 inches wide or so in the craft stores, and you can get a lot of rosettes out of one of those spools. So that's the organza one. This one is the netting. This is netting, and I bought this netting by the yard, I think at Joann's. This one I had a little bit of trouble. This is 4 layers of netting. And the thing that was a little challenging with this is that when I cut I have 4 strips here. When I layered them on top of each other, they kept wanting to stick to each other along the edges, and I was having trouble lining them up. So I lined them up, and then I put pins along the length of the ribbon before I started sewing, and that kept all of the layers exactly even along the edge as I was stitching. But really pretty effect. Love that. Okay, the netting, again, this one was 13 inches long by 1.5 inches wide as a starting point on that. Okay, and then the last one here was made out of a strip of torn 100% cotton fabric. And I think I bought this fabric at Hobby Lobby last summer. They have some plain cottons in there, so that's what this is. And the strip that I used on this one was 1.5 inches wide by 15 inches long with 1/4 inch stitches. And I left the torn edge, I just tore across the width of the fabric to get my strip. And I love this soft kind of vintage distressed edge. I love that very, very much. So, but again, just, you know, once you stitch it together and tie your knot, you want to go through and just, you know, shape your pleats a little bit with your fingers to get them to lay the way you want them to. But gosh, these are pretty. And wouldn't these look so beautiful, just layered up with different, you know, die cuts? You could add ribbon to the back of these, or rickrack, or, you know, whatever you like. So lots of fun things, a little bit of experimenting happening with that. So I had a really fun time. Okay, so to glitter this, let's try it. I'm going to use my Elmer's Glue All, regular old glue, and I'm going to squirt this out onto my silicone mat. Pull this over a little bit, and I'm just going to put a little bit, you know, 3 or 4 inches long in the middle of my mat. Now, you can kind of leave it somewhat thick like this, or you can brush it out just a little bit so that it's not so, the glue layer isn't quite so thick. But I'm going to leave it because I'm going to be dipping the edges of this rosette, and I really want the glue to get right into those little cracks and crevices. So I'm going to roll my rosette edge right through the glue, just like this. Oh wait, let me slide this up so you can see it a little bit easier, right? Make some space. That's better. Okay, so I'm, again, just rolling it into the glue. You could alternatively use a brush if you wanted to have a little bit more control over exactly where the glue goes. And also, if you wanted it coming up along the edges a little bit on the front, you might want to use a brush. Or maybe just, I'm just dabbing it a little bit into that glue. We'll see how that works. So again, you know, just kind of experimenting a little bit with some different techniques will give you different results, and then you can decide, you know, what you think you like the best. Okay, so I've got glue all around the edge of my rosette and just a little bit along the front edge there where I, you know, dipped it in a little bit, kind of on a sideways angle there. Okay, so now I'm going to place my rosette on a piece of cardstock, and I'm going to get my glitter of choice. Let's see here. I think we'll use this, I don't know, what would look better? The white? I think the white, and the reason being is that there are stars on here, and I want the focus to be on the stars, not as much on the glitter. So I think that the white glitter is going to just kind of give me a hint of interest along that edge. Okay, I'm just going to take the cap off, and I'm going to sprinkle. Let's see if you can you see that okay? Oh, slide it up just a bit. There we go. I'm going to sprinkle this around the edge. Bring this up here. Okay. I'm going to lift this up, dump it. Okay, and I am, in addition to that, I'm going to roll this like a wheel, like a pastry wheel, right through the glitter on the very edge, so that I can be sure that my glue is making contact with the glitter. Okay, I'm just checking it now to see that all of the edges are covered. If I see an empty spot, I'll just dip it back into the glue for a second. And I think we're okay. Let's take, oh wait, right here. Okay, take a look. Oh, that's pretty. And there's the glitter. And of course, you know, when the glue dries, it'll turn clear and you'll just see the glitter there. But I just love that. I can't wait to decorate this up. Yeah. So that's part of what I've been experimenting with a little bit this week. And hopefully, off camera, I'm going to go ahead and try glittering up some of the fabric ones as well and see what happens. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and maybe there's some ideas here that you can make use of in your own crafting. And I hope you have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you back again really soon. Take care. Bye for now.